Hi folks, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here and welcome if you're new to this channel. We are going to continue with the Gosho on the Sutra of True Requital. It occurs to me in this sutra that once again Nichiren is speaking to people living in an extremely authoritarian regime, the shogunate, being samurai assassins everywhere, with their own designs on power, politics, so on and so forth. It's a dangerous time. And oftentimes, when we read letters that Nichiren is teaching and sharing Lotus Sutra and other sutra scholarship with his followers, his tone changes depending on whether he's talking to you particularly or to all of us as more of a teaching moment, a larger teaching moment. I would describe that. We need to come up with a word. As you know, I believe we teach ourselves. So there's really no teacher, but there is a facilitator, somebody who presents us with materials to consider and integrate into our experience of life. That's the way I view teaching. And so that can be done on a person-to-person basis, and it also can be done in a way to teach the person who's teaching themselves how to teach others or assist others to teach themselves more accurately. So all of that is to say that Nichiren oftentimes will do what a parent does, like in our modern times. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the old sayings like, it's all well and good and it's all fun and games until somebody gets their eye poked out, right? As So the examples given are sometimes far more exaggerated consequences than we hope to experience. But in Nichiren's day, with the epidemics and the famine and the earthquakes and so forth of natural events, and then with the Mongols invading and the civil wars amongst themselves in Japan, there's a lot to choose from to demonstrate the effect of cause. I kind of dislike using those terms. Cause and effect are so overused in modern Buddhism. It's true, cause and effect, but Buddhism didn't invent cause and effect. It's been around since every mathematician, physicist, astronomer, anyone who used logic in their lives, farmers, they know what rain means. They know cause and effect. They know the relationship between their actions and their results and what they get from their reactions. It's nothing new about cause and effect. So that's why I kind of shy away from it in Buddhism, because it's hackneyed. But that doesn't mean it's not true. It's just so obvious, right? But what's maybe not so obvious is that oftentimes we find ourselves in circumstances and we claim to be victims of circumstance, when in fact in Buddhism, if you're in a circumstance that's uncomfortable or causing you suffering, you are not the victim of it. Although you may be victimized by it, you are also the creator or participator in its manifestation. You can't get a... Buddhism doesn't allow you to conveniently say, it's not my fault. There's part of your life, your karmic momentum, that put you in this situation. You can change it, but that requires very profound understanding of how you are there in the first place. And say that's an uncomfortable part of Buddhism, because that's the effort part. That's the uneasy part. That's the part where we go, well, can't I just have the ice cream? Right? I don't want to eat the entree. I'm not that hungry, but I'll have ice cream, right? That's human nature. We want it easy. But Buddhism doesn't let us get away with that. So this is the effort part of Buddhism. You have to confront your karmic engine of existence and move it, influence it toward what you absolutely know, right? Your clear-minded perspective of the forces that work in your life, in all life. Okay? So, let's continue with this, and you'll understand why I said all of that, I think. I hope. So we'll continue. By rights, by rights. This is right away. This is what I'm talking about. This is an English translation, so I'm sure he used different words. But the point here is, by rights, the heavenly deities should command another nation to punish our country, but too many people on both sides would perish. Punishment. This is a story of cause and effect, and it's being translated in a very Western way. But be that as it may, I want you to see beyond these English vernacular and understand the point Nichiren is making here. Thus, the design of the heavenly deities, or the forces of nature, is to avoid a general conflict, because it's compassionate, and instead to first destroy the people in this epidemic, which is in effect cutting off the ruler's hands and feet, thereby compelling the ruler and high ministers of this nation to honor the Lotus Sutra. In this way, they intend to wipe out the enemies of the Lotus Sutra and make way for the propagation of the correct teaching. Well, there it is. You know, somebody's going to poke an eye out. This is a very westernized thinking. So, how can we see this in another way? What is Nichiren trying to say? He's giving examples and has given examples of how in the sutras themselves, the proper practice of Buddhism for instantiating Buddha in your life, in your environment, in your country, in your leaders, in your whole experience of life, for yourself and your environment, is obviously given in the Myoho Renge Kyo, in the Lotus Sutra. Right? Myoho Renge Kyo is the name of the sutra. It is what the sutra is all about. Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren didn't invent that. He's reading it verbatim from the sutras. It's not Nichiren's invention. It's Nichiren's assistance to all of us on how to practice Buddhism correctly via the teachings of Shakyamuni himself. And what he's saying is, if you're going to deviate from that, you're not doing yourself any good. But if you further deviate from it in order to villainize it, in order to demonize it, in order to discount it, why would you do that? You're working against your own best interest. That's ridiculous. And when that kind of attitude is pervasive all the way to the leader of the nation, which is your nation, your environment, the leader is part of your existence, then the karmic cause, the actions being taken, you can't sit there and say, well, I didn't say to invade that place. I didn't, spit in the face of the Mongols. Well, yes, you did. Maybe not you individually, personally, but your karmic existence in your tendencies and conditions, right? Buddhism is all about the manifestations of tendencies, and within conditions, your condition is to be a samurai or a follower or a farmer or whatever, instantiated at a time when your masters and your ruler are samurai, shogunate, authoritarian monsters. Violent, angry, devious, power-hungry. You can't just sit and make yourself a victim of that situation. You have to understand that somehow your life is in this situation because of your participation in that kind of thinking, in that kind of way. And you're getting to see it on a massive scale. I think that's probably the hardest part of Buddhist practice, is realizing our complicitness in the life around us. Conversely, this is why in Buddhism we have this mission of assisting others to make this realization, because if enough of us make this realization, we will change that karmic tendency and change the conditions toward a world that's far less brutal, that's more kind and enveloping of the amazing thing that is life, rather than constantly using life as a weapon of power. You follow? So this is what Nichiren is saying here, is because all of this anti-life sentiment is going on, using the Lotus Sutra as a point of demonizing and choosing instead philosophies and ideas and teachings that oppose it. That alone is so unlife affirming, life unaffirming, that these reactions are coming at you. The Mongols invading, the disease spreading, the crops not flourishing, the weather being terrible. They're all expressions in our environment of a situation we are complicit in creating. That's what Nichiren is saying. Nevertheless, he continues, when I was exiled to the province of Sado, the constable of the province and the other officials, following the design of the ruler of the nation, treated me with animosity. And the people went along with those orders. In addition, the Nembutsu, Zen precepts, and true word monks in Kamakura sent word that by no means should I be allowed to return from the island of Sado, and Ryokan and of Gokurakuji and others persuaded the former governor of the province of Musashi to issue his own letters of instruction, which were carried to Sado by Ryokan's disciples, ordering that I be persecuted. See, this cause making, it's happening all around us. And I, Nichiren, the votary of the Lotus Sutra, am being attacked not because I'm a fisherman's son, not because I'm Nichiren, but because I'm a votary. I'm strongly putting forth the correction of Buddhist practice. And they don't want to hear it. They're fighting it. They're resisting it, right? Just like when you put disinfectant in an open wound. The first thing it does is cause you great pain. But realize that that is just the natural order of fighting back something that wants to harm you. It just manifests as more pain. Thus it seemed that I could not possibly escape with my life. Whatever the design of the heavenly deities in the matter that I may have been, every single steward and Nembutsu believer worthy of the name, kept strict watch on my hut day and night, determined to prevent anyone from communicating with me. Never in any lifetime will I forget how in those circumstances you, with a butsubo, carrying a wooden container of food on his back, came in the night again and again to bring me aid. It was just as if my deceased mother had suddenly been reborn in the province of Sado. Wow. So, reconnoitering, remembering the situation in Sado, and how driven by false views and animus these people were. Again, embodying Nichiren as the Lotus Sutra, we're actually taking action against the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren's just an intermediary here. Please view it that way. So, when these people were willing willingly causing Nichiren harm. They had basically taken everything he was teaching and promulgating on the Lotus Sutra and embodying that in him, the person, and wanting to cause him great harm. But in fact, their causes were directed at the Lotus Sutra. And this is why the forces of nature and environment were responding in kind. Not because there were, rain gods and epidemic gods going, you can't do that to my bro Nichiren, I'll show you. No, that's not it. That's magical thinking. That's what religions do. That's not what we do as Buddhists. We understand that we are manifestations of energy, and that energy can either flow or be directed, influenced, or quashed like water on fire. And these people were trying to quash the energy of Buddha. There is no greater misunderstanding of life. Buddha is life. It is a participation and exploration and experience of the totality of the amazing process that we call life. Anything against that is against Buddha. And as humans, we like to identify everything. So let's call Buddha this guy and let's bury him. But it doesn't make your offense any less because you've managed to put it in a human body. Remember, self and environment are one. So this is what Nichiren is talking about. We have a great mission here in not just saving the people, saving them from their own demise and their own karmic defeat, if you will. But we have to get to the leader of the nation, because as the leader goes, so does the nation and all the people in it. This is why authoritarianship is such a terrible thing. He goes on, once in China there was a man known as the governor of Pei. Because there were signs indicating that he would become the ruler, the first emperor of the Qin dynasty decreed that unparalleled rewards would be bestowed upon anyone who would kill him. He didn't want the competition, right? The governor thought it would be too dangerous to try to conceal himself in the country villages, and so he entered the mountains, where he remained hidden for 7 days, and then for another 7. At that time, he believed that his life was as good as lost. But the governor had a wife of the Liu family who went searching for him in the mountains, and from time to time would bring him food to keep him alive. Being the governor's wife, she could not help but feel compassion for him. But in your case, had you not been concerned about the life to come, would you have shown me such devotion? And that is also the reason why you have remained steadfast throughout, even when you were driven from your land, fined, and your house taken from you. Right? Because followers of Nichiren were disciplined by this military authoritarian regime. And yet they still remain steadfast in their assisted learning of Lotus Sutra through Nichiren. He was the link to the Lotus Sutra for them, and they praised him, even though they lost their belongings, their land. They were impoverished because they followed this man. Because, I shouldn't have said it that way, but you understand what I'm saying. Following this man would bring the wrath of the authoritarian regimes and all of those who obeyed that regime. Right? In the Lotus Sutra, it is said that one who in the past has made offerings to 100,000 million Buddhas will, when reborn in the latter existence, be unshakable in resolve. You then must be a woman who has made offerings to 100,000 million Buddhas. So again, Buddhism is about what? The mind, and in that it's about intent and attitude. So this is a way of saying that because you are behaving this way, not because it's a new thing, but because in your life, even before you met the votary of the Lotus Sutra, you've always tried to be a good, equitable, life-affirming person. And now you've anchored that steady tendency and condition of your mind on the votary of the Lotus Sutra. What more praiseworthy could this life be? Even though you are assailed by this authoritarian regime and the people that follow it, you still remain steadfast in having a correct attitude and intent of life affirmation. And you found that through Nichiren's help, Bodhisattva, the Lotus Sutra, the Myoho Renge Kyo. And you're not going to retreat. You're resolved. That's what that's saying. In addition, it is easy to sustain our concern for someone who is before our very eyes. Right? That's, you would think, a natural human behavior, that if somebody's being vilified in front of us, we're going to respond. Although in our day and age, not so much, right? But quite a different thing when that person is far away, even though in our heart we may not forget him. Nevertheless, in the 5 years from the 11th year of the Bunei era, 1274, to this year, the first year of the Koan era, that have already passed since I came to live here in the mountains, you have sent your husband from the province of Sado to visit me 3 times. How great is your sincerity? And this is something I've talked about before. You know, we feel safe here in our world. But remember that our world also includes Yemen, Darfur, Brazil, Ethiopia. That's our environment. And there is horrendous murder and slaughter going on in these places and others, while we sit here eating our cheeseburgers. It's important that we remember that those vile acts are also our environment, our manifestation. We can't just go blind because we can't see it. We have to work every day with the attitude, with the cause making, with the influence of life affirmation, the preciousness of life. And whoever will hear us, we need to share with them that we are bonded by this goal. Myoho Renge Kyo. It is firmer than the great earth, deeper than the great sea, because it transcends those things. When he was Prince Sattva in a previous existence, again, this is storytelling, right? The thus come one Shakyamuni gained merit by feeding his body to a starving tigress. And when he was King Shibi, he gained merit by, or reward, by giving his flesh to a hawk in exchange for the life of a dove. And he declared in the presence of many treasures and the Buddhas of the 10 directions that he would transfer this merit or reward to those who would believe in the Lotus Sutra as you do in the latter day of the law. It's a very colorful expression of the very same kind of awe that Nichiren, a bodhisattva, has for this woman's actions, as is Myoho Renge Kyo. She is manifesting Myoho Renge Kyo. You say in your letter that the 11th day of the 8th month of this year marks the 13th anniversary of your father's passing. You also note that you are enclosing an offering of 1,000 coins. It is extremely kind of you to do so. Fortunately, I happen to have a copy of the Lotus Sutra in 10 volumes. That I would like to send you. Hey, Amazon didn't exist back then. To have a copy, which, as you know, is a part of our practice, to read, recite, embrace, copy, recite. When we do Gangyo, we recite a couple of chapters out of the Lotus Sutra, out of the Myoho Renge Kyo. But to endeavor to write that down and spread it, that's another matter. That's not an easy thing to do. And the only way you got a copy of that book is because somebody put pen in hand and recreated that document. No printing presses back then. So not only would those copies take a long time to make, they would be held as precious things to study, restudy, reread, recite from, right? And Nichiren, probably by his own hand, has another copy of the Lotus Sutra, which he's probably doing when he's not writing letters to people. He's copying the Lotus Sutra, making mandalas of Myoho Renge-kyo. And he's identified her with so much appreciation that he wants her to have one of these. Wow. When you think longingly of me, have Gakujo Bo read it, and please listen to it. And in a future existence, you may use this copy of the sutra as a token of proof with which to search me out. So not only is he going to send her a copy of this book, but he knows that she's illiterate. She can't read it for herself. As a majority of the populace back then was not able to read or write. But there was someone in her environment, her husband evidently, who was educated enough as a minister of Sado. He had reached a level of literacy that he could read it and write it. And so have him read it to you. That's so amazing to me. It's something hard to fathom in our modern day, isn't it? In view of the epidemics that raged the year before last year, and this year, I was so concerned about how all of you were faring that I meditated earnestly to the Lotus Sutra. But still, I felt uneasy. Then, on the 27th day of the 7th month, at the hour of the monkey, 3 to 5 p.m., Abutsubo appeared. I asked him first how you were, and how the lay priest of Ko was. He told me that neither of you had fallen ill, and that the lay priest of Ko had set out along with him, but because the early rice was nearly ripe, and because he had no sons to help him harvest it, he had had no choice but to turn back. When I heard all this, I felt as if I were a blind man who had recovered his sight, as if my deceased father and mother had come to me in a dream from the palace of King Yama, and in that dream I had felt great joy. It is a strange and wonderful thing, but both here and in Kamakura, very few of my followers have died from this plague. It is as if all of us were riding in the same boat, and though it would be too much to expect that we would all survive, still, just when disaster seemed to be upon us, another boat came out to rescue us. Or it is as if the dragon deities were watching over us and making it possible for us to reach the shores in safety. It is indeed wondrous. So that's an interesting observation, right? My followers, those of you who are devout in Myoho Renge-kyo, in the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha's Lotus Sutra, following me, the vocal, current, orator, votary of that sutra, our life condition is such that it has maintained health in the midst of this year-to-year pandemic. Well, epidemic, because it's in Japan, but I'm sure it went beyond there. Smallpox and terrible things. And somehow they're all still healthy. Concerning the lay priest Ichinosawa, please tell his wife, the lay nun, that I am grieved to hear of his death. But I have already told her quite clearly now how matters stand with her husband, and she will no doubt recall my words. regardless of the fact that he had a hall in his house dedicated to Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha will never save an enemy of the Lotus Sutra. On the contrary, such a person renders himself a foe of Amida Buddha, because Amida Buddha is a teaching, not a person. A teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha. After his death, he must have fallen into the evil paths of existence and been filled with deep regret. It is a great pity. So at this time, there was still, culturally, this belief that life in some form existed beyond the grave. We know that that's not, that I've already explained ad nauseum how when the body dies, the mind dies. But the karma, the energy that we share as related to those, like father and mother, brother, sister, we have chunks of that energy in our manifestation. And so we carry that with us. But that's not their life beyond the grave. That's our life. Their mind, their body, done. End. So I know it can be confusing because there's this constant repetition of this, but I think that I've taken that apart so many ways now. You have to start inculcating that thinking into your mind, that when life is done, it's done. The energy that creates it simply ebbs and reintegrates into the total of potential, not identified, not with a toe tag on it, no bag of Bob, or box of Betty. Betty is a temporary identification we give to an experience in this life, and it ends with the body. That experience is something mental. That's why Buddhism is about the mind. I am mindful, however, that the lay priest Ichinosawa on several occasions saved my life by hiding me in a corridor of his residence, and I have therefore tried to think of something that can be done for him. Will you please ask Gakujobo to read the Lotus Sutra regularly at his grave? Even so, I do not think that this will enable him to reach enlightenment. Of course not, because he no longer exists. But using that attachment that we have for what we've identified in this life, in this case, that dead priest, we can convert that emotion and attachment and redirect it to the teachings of Myoho Renge-kyo. Nichiren constantly does this. In fact, he wrote an entire gosho about it. Earthly desires are enlightenment. He uses attachment as a tool of practice. Not because the actual desire is what renders you Buddha, but because the impetus, the nature, the depth of that attachment in our human experience can drive us to resolve, to more deeply, single-mindedly fuse with Buddha. It has nothing to do with what we desire. It has to do with that formation of desire, that tremendous energy we have toward attachment, and redirecting it to enlightenment. Please tell his wife, the lay nun, that I grieve at the thought of how desolate and lonely she must feel. I will write more at another time. So, lots and lots of compassion in this gosho, lots and lots of conversion therapy, if you will, a sort of conversion, in taking all of this misery and all of this difficulty, and number one, lauding this woman for sending her husband through the ocean to come and visit him and bring him food at Mount Minobu. Incredible resolve. And so he wants to reward her with merit, letting her know once again how tremendous her cause-making is, bolstering her to continue in that vein, to realize her Buddhahood, and showing her not only the tremendous gift of the Lotus Sutra, but notice that he doesn't just give her a copy and leave it there. He says, now that you have that copy, you're going to take responsibility and be a votary of the Lotus Sutra too. See, everything's about bodhisattva behavior in Myoho Renge Kyo. So now she's not only going to have her husband read the Lotus Sutra to her, but as she learns more and as her husband is with her, they together can go and visit these others who have been stricken by misfortune, have brought, because they practice Nembutsu, have brought upon themselves, even though they're mixed bag, like this monk who fell ill and died, actually helped Nichiren and protect Nichiren. So there's a conflict there. So he was doing good cause making, but couldn't overcome the deeper cause of working against the Lotus Sutra most of the time. So he ends up getting sick and dying. But there is something redeemable in his existence, and what will be redeemed is the affectation and attachment of all of those around him, lest they go by the same way. So let's take their attachment and wanting, I don't care how wrong it is, I want to die with him, that kind of thinking, and let's convert it into right thinking, life-affirming thinking, Myoho Renge Kyo thinking, so that they can, with whatever energetic component they shared with the deceased, be converted to life-affirming Buddhahood. I hope that makes sense. That's it for that Gosho. I thank you so much for listening. If any of that was confusing or you just need more information about it, you can email me, you can comment below, and let's figure it out together, okay? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Amazing. Our Sangha keeps growing. I'm astounded by your practice. Keep it up and stay healthy. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. See you next time.